Welcome to ABA Basics for Parents. This presentation is part of the series developed by the team at Pacific Northwest Autism to help provide parents and caregivers with information and a greater understanding of ABA and related topics. All presentations, in part or in whole, are the property of Pacific Northwest Autism. This presentation will cover the functions of behavior. During this presentation, we will talk about the common types of behaviors, what are the functions of the behavior, which is why the behavior is occurring and what is the underlying cause of the behavior, and we will also briefly talk about how to respond to the behaviors. Firstly, I would like to discuss common types of behaviors that we observe in some of our clients. These are mainly inappropriate behaviors that we would like to decrease in the future. The first we'll define is aggression. Aggression is hitting, kicking, biting, scratching, or throwing items at others to inflict bodily harm. Non-compliance is verbal or physical refusal or ignoring of a demand or task or situation. A tantrum is one or more maladaptive behaviors that continue for 15 seconds or longer. For example, the tantrum could be yelling and non-compliance for 15 seconds or longer. Property destruction is defined as purposely throwing, destroying, or dismantling property. Elopement is defined as leaving the area, room, or a demand or task. A self-injury behavior is defined as attempting to cause harm to one's body. And lastly, stereotypy is any repetitive, persistent behavior that occurs in multiple environments. For example, hand flapping, vocal tics, lining up toys, twirling, repetitive quoting of shows or movies, among others. So once you figure out the specific behavior that you're targeting, you will then want to determine the function of the behavior. So what are functions of behavior? Behavior is everything an individual does in their environment. A behavior is any reaction to certain things in the environment, any change in the environment that a human does. Behaviors can serve different functions depending on what is going on in the person's environment. So, why do people behave in certain ways? Why do people exhibit these behaviors? What factors contribute to behavior? Notice that there are many different environmental factors that may or may not contribute to a child's behavior. For example, who is with the child? Where is the child right now in the environment? What is the child's past experience in this situation or environment? And are there current physical or medical issues? So these are all factors that we analyze when trying to determine why the behavior is occurring. There are 4 functions of behavior. All behaviors serve a function. The 4 functions are attention, escape avoidance, access to tangible, and automatic. First we will talk about attention. Attention is any attention given to the behavior or to the child. It could be head turns, surprised facial expressions, attempts to soothe, reprimands, or even unintentional and slight facial expressions. For example, a student in a classroom will get up and run around the room repeatedly when the teacher is helping other students with their work. Usually, the teacher will stop what she is doing and scold the student as soon as they are disrupting the class. So the teacher is giving attention to the behavior, which is reinforcing the behavior. So, what to do for attention-seeking behaviors? What you want to do is to put the inappropriate attention-seeking behavior on extinction, which means do not give it any attention. Don't reinforce the behavior with attention. And teach the child a more appropriate attention-seeking behavior. This could be asking for help, asking for a break, or asking for attention in a more appropriate way. The next function we will discuss is escape avoidance. Escape is an act of escaping an undesired activity or demand. Avoidance is the act of avoiding to begin an undesired activity or task. For example, a child does not want to continue or begin their homework, so they engage in a tantrum to escape or avoid the homework. What to do with escape or avoidance? Safety first, especially in public. You don't want the child to be in a harmful situation. Continue to require the child to do the task in the moment. Do not let them escape out of the demand you presented, or else you'll be reinforcing their behavior. The next function is access to tangible. It means that a behavior is resulted in an access to a preferred material or some other stimuli. For example, a child may engage in a tantrum in the candy aisle of the grocery store. Her mother eventually gets her a candy bar so that she will stop the inappropriate behavior and so they can get through the rest of the shopping trip in peace. So she is being reinforced with the tangible, so her behavior is reduced. What to do in the situation where the function is access to tangible? Teach the child a more functional replacement behavior to gain access to the preferred toy or activity, which we will discuss a little bit later. The last function of behavior I will discuss is automatic. Automatic function is maintained by the naturally occurring sensory inputs and satisfies their 5 sensory needs. This function is usually known as the stereotypic or self-stimulatory behaviors. For example, flapping hands, toe walking, twirling, spinning, or fondling body parts. Since automatic behaviors are reinforced throughout their internal system, what to do is to enrich the environment around them and give them things to replace those automatic behaviors. So the ABC process is the most basic process in behavior. This occurs when an antecedent, the A portion, in the environment invokes an individual's behavior, B, which then produces a consequence, C, for that behavior. So antecedent is what occurs before the behavior is any act that alters the environment, and the consequence is what occurs after the behavior. For example, we can talk about what happens when you eat salty chips. If you eat enough salt, you will start to feel thirsty. You go look for some water and quench your thirst. The antecedent here would be the salty chips inducing the feeling of thirst. Your behavior would be to look for and drink water, and the consequence would then be that you quenched your thirst. Another example of an ABC process is your alarm goes off at 7 o'clock a.m., which is the antecedent. Your behavior is that you turn your alarm off and then you go back to sleep because you turned your alarm off and now you're late for work, which is the consequence. So to relate this to a child with developmental delays, will begin a tantrum, may begin a tantrum whenever they do not get something they want. To appease them, an adult might give them whatever it is that they want to stop the tantrum. In this case, not getting what they want would be the antecedent. The behavior to the antecedent would be the tantrum, and the consequence to their tantrum would be that they get what they want. This child may then learn to tantrum whenever they don't get what they want, because in the past, they were then able to get the desired item. This behavior has been reinforced by the consequence. This leads us into the basic principles of behavior, which is changing an individual's behavior by changing either the antecedent or consequence in an environmental relationship. So we'll look a little bit more into what to do if the behavior is maintained by attention or access to tangible. We use a strategy called non-contingent reinforcement, NCR. This strategy gives random acts of attention throughout the day or the session so that the child is not craving attention in other more inappropriate ways. This gives attention to the child when he's engaging in appropriate behaviors. We can also do extinction or planned ignoring, which is not reinforcing a behavior that has been previously reinforced in the past. We can replace the behavior with a more appropriate attention-seeking response or functional communication training. An example of this would be teaching the child to ask for a hug instead of crying until a hug is given. We also see this when the child tantrums during a demand or task. We can teach the child to ask for a break, which would be a more functional way to escape the demand or task. Now we'll talk about if the behavior is maintained by escape avoidance or of something aversive. So non-contingent reinforcement in the forms from break. So this is an alternative escape behavior. If the child is tantruming, like I said earlier, due to a demand task, we can offer them a non-contingent reinforcement in the form of a break from work. They can more functionally ask for the break. High P instructional sequence, which is to ask them to do 3 easy tasks and then ask them to do 1 more difficult task. This allows them to have more of an opportunity for success if they do the 3 easy tasks before the one more difficult task. Another theory and strategy is to put the escape on extinction, which means that you do not allow them to get out of the task by engaging in the behavior. And then the last theory and strategy that we use is to teach functional communication to have the child request a break, saying, I need a break, please, or I need a minute, or I need, 1 more minute, please, which is a more functional way to escape escape the undesired task. If a behavior is maintained by automatic reinforcement or a self-stimulatory behavior, what we do is to enrich the environment, bring in different toys and activities that will help to almost distract the child from the self-stimulatory behavior. We can block the response, not allow them to engage in the self-stimulatory behavior, put something in their hands so they're not able to flap their hands. We can interrupt or redirect. This can be done in many different ways. You can tickle the client, you can give them high fives, any way to interrupt the behavior. Or you can establish an alternative self-stimulatory response. For example, for a child who seeks stimulation from spinning, give them a fidget toy to satisfy that self-stimulatory behavior in a more socially appropriate manner.